Hey everybody, this is Joe. Thank you for watching my Giga Texas construction update video.
Hey everybody, welcome back to Giga Texas. It's Wednesday, the 8th of May, 2024. There's a lot of activity going on today, a little better day to fly. Some low clouds, a little bit of mist this morning at the beginning of the video, but otherwise it cleared up and we got a lot to see. Now, a few things to look for in the video that we're going to cover in the intro. On the west side, the Boring Company is busy getting ready to tunnel again today. They were setting up the belt cassette and also the conveyor belt, and they were doing some work on the liner trucks, as you'll see in the video. Now, if you want to know more about what's going on with the Boring Company and the tunneling operations here at Giga Texas, I have put out part one of my Boring Company tour video yesterday, and tomorrow part two, which will talk a lot more about Giga Texas and what we can expect, plus additional information about the Boring Company's development of the Proof Rock series of tunnel boring machines. Now, over on the main site on the south end, we still see a lot of work going on. Steel assembly in that middle section is rapidly closing it in. There's just a very small section remaining that needs to have the steel assembly. Also, as you can tell by this great shot through the structure, there are multiple different floors, some at the mezzanine level and some at the normal level. So we've seen this pattern throughout the rest of the structure as well, so it's continuing here on the south end. We also get a chance to look at that structural cooling platform where additional work is being done, putting in what looks to be some sort of a metal framing that will go around where the air handling and the air fan units will be installed from the Evapco items that we see on the northwest side staging location, as you can tell by this image. Now, one more area that I want to talk about is on the northeast side of the casting machine structure. We see that trench work continuing, more of the conduit being installed. On the ground, we can see where they are marking the concrete for removal. And then on the north side of Tesla Road, we see where all of the conduit continues to be installed, and it works its way up to the electrical switch yard, and then will eventually connect through and underneath Tesla Road over to that northeast side. So there is a lot more to see today in the video, so we'll get into that right now. Thank you very much for watching. I do appreciate it. Have a great day.
If you would like to support my efforts, please consider using these links, which will be in the video description. Don't forget to hit the like and subscribe buttons on my YouTube video, as this helps as well. Thank you. My drones are ready and raring to go. Let's go flying over Giga Texas. Welcome to another low cloud and misty morning at Giga Texas, but fortunately the conditions will improve over the length of the video. We're going to start here on the west side, taking a look at the north end of the end of line facility. See a lot of Cybertrucks in motion and lining up to go through the facility. More of them are arriving here, and of course in this parking lot, more of the Cybertrucks are being stored here as they are coming off the production line, and they are waiting for their opportunity to go through processing. And as I continue to maneuver the drone around this section, we see some of the continued work on the bottom of the screen to finish out this north end of the lot, and also a good view looking across this lot with all of the Cybertrucks lined up here, and more in the middle. And we see a lot more in the top middle of the screen as well, and even more on the west side. So there's definitely a lot of Cybertrucks, not as many Model Ys, and I will talk about that here in just a second. On this far west side, I wanted to show you some of the work that is going on for this eventual roadway that will go through where the green belt is. They're continuing to do some work on piping, underground piping. Also, they've been doing some electrical work on this side as well. And it looks like into this neighborhood, there's a barrier, but they're also doing some sort of excavation work onto this roadway. I'm not sure why, or maybe they're going to be putting in a barrier, but it almost looks like this road may connect to the new road that we were just talking about. So this is something else that I will be watching as time develops. So my discussion about the vehicles and what we're seeing here on the outbound lot and how it relates to production. I've had a lot of viewers ask about that. They've said that they've noted that there's less Model Ys and they wanted to know what is going on. What I can say is that, and we actually see some more Model Ys coming up the road. What I can say is that production is continuing, but it is definitely at a lower rate than we have seen. And the explanation for this has to do with basically the staffing reductions that have recently happened. From what I understand, the Model Y production line was hit fairly substantially with the personnel reductions, and that is starting to be reflected in what we're seeing currently with the production. The Cybertruck, on the other hand, has not been affected nearly as much, and that is why we're seeing the production of the Cybertrucks at a much higher rate at the moment. So hopefully that helps answer and address some of the questions that I get from viewers about what we were seeing over the last several days. Now, as I maneuver over the West Warehouse on Wheels, I'll bring the drone down. I want to show you where all of the concrete liners are for the boring tunnel. There were about twice as many here at one time, but we see the numbers diminishing. We also see this metal ramp on the right-hand side of the screen. That may be related to the exit of the tunnel at some point in the future. But the number of tunnel segments, or the liners, gives us an idea of the length of the tunnel as it is right now. And there's a few other indicators that I will be talking about here shortly. But as I maneuver the drone here to give you a good view of the tunneling operations as it looks today, we can see on the bottom left more of the tunnel liners have been moved over here. We can see that the liner trucks are on this ramp going into the boring tunnel entrance. And there's another one behind that looks like they're putting it onto a charger. As I've mentioned before, these are all electric vehicles, and they are using rubber tires and wheels at an angle rather than using a rail system to bring in the tunnel liners. And that is a kind of an innovation that the boring company has introduced with this method of tunneling. But we also see, the crews getting ready for the tunneling to begin again today. We see that conveyor with the belt, and we see the belt cassette on the right-hand side of the screen. And then between the conveyor belt on the left and the belt cassette on the right, we see that kind of that yellow and white piece of equipment, and that's where the belt not only turns 90 degrees, but it's where they are removing more of the, watery kind of almost mud type of material that's coming out of the tunnel versus just the dirt that we've been seeing up until this time. And so that tells us a few things, and one of those things is that the consistency of the soil that they are digging through is definitely changing. The color is changing. You can see here that instead of the brown on the right, it's now a darker color. And we can also see, as I maneuver the drone around here, next to where the belt does a 90-degree turn, you'll see like a container and a almost like a siphon, and it's draining water out into that container. Those blue containers that we saw that look like trailers on the left-hand side of the screen is to collect all of that water. Now, the reason why the dirt has changed is that back in 2005 and 2007 timeframe, when they were building the highway, they brought a lot of dirt in to raise the grade. And that was the brown dirt that we're seeing. And now that the tunnel has gone past that and it's at a deeper and a kind of the old original type of soil, which was part of the sand and gravel mine and an underlying clay layer. That is why we're seeing the color of the dirt change. And that suggests that the tunnel has most likely passed the east side of the highway at this point in time. So we'll continue to monitor that as we get back over here at the outbound lot. We'll take a look at these tents that are part of the checkout of the vehicles and part of the process of preparing them for transportation. And the supercharger lot is kind of busy today. We've seen it much busier than this, but there is a mix of Model Ys and Cybertrucks. And as you can tell, they are just arriving from the factory and they are being put into their appropriate positions, either charging or preparing for the checkouts. There's no vehicles here on the east side of the end-of-line facility. And as I turn back around here, I'll give a lower altitude view of the north end and the activity with the Cybertrucks getting ready to go through the end-of-line facility for processing. So anyway, that's a lot of discussion for the west side and kind of explaining the activity that we're seeing with the new vehicles and also the boring company. So let's get ready to go across the highway and we'll resume the narration on the other side. Stopping here momentarily just to take a look at the work that's going on with this underground piping system. They have the pumps and there's additional work, possibly maintenance, that is going underway for that particular installation. Now here is where the Model Ys exit the factory. Through these open doors and the ramps, we could see that the lighting for the end-of-line final checks is on and operational. We see another Model Y just exiting. So the production rate is definitely continuing, but as we talked about earlier, it's been reduced because of the staffing changes. We also see the continued work to get the stone glass trapezoidal structure underneath these beams and columns cleaned up. This seems to be a common and recurring issue. And it also may indicate that there's going to be a presentation of some sort that's going to happen out this side of the building in the near future. So that'll be something we can monitor and see if that in fact happens. As we continue to fly to the south over one of those yard trucks that brings the trailers from the warehouse on wheels, we're going to see that there are many Cybertrucks on this staging location next to this trailer. And in addition to that, as I turn the drone back towards the southwest corner, we see many of the Cybertrucks have exited and are continuing to exit out of the building. And this is the end of line for the main factory where they depart the structure, and then they are driven on the road currently to the south under the south bridge and over to that west outbound lot. So as we talked about before, Cybertruck production seems to be really ramping up still despite the staffing changes. This is a really good view into the south extension. Multiple different levels of the floors are emerging. So that would be a ground floor, a first floor mezzanine, a second floor mezzanine, and possibly a third floor in certain areas is starting to emerge. But I'll bring the drone down here. Good view of the ground floor. The activity that is going on with some concrete, with materials, a lot of piping, some concrete pipe segments on the left as well, and also some areas of the ground slab that have been poured with concrete already. As I bring the drone up, a good view into the second floor, and in the distance you can see the second floor mezzanine and even the third floor that is beginning to emerge right between the original structure and the new structure. And that's all that area that is being assembled with steel right now. And I'll give you a closer view of that here shortly. As I maneuver the drone around here, also you can tell by the color, a little bit of time has changed. There was a bit of a rainstorm that came through, so now that conditions have improved, I'll pull back, show you the south end, but also I'm going to show you all of these coils or spools of this yellow conduit, a flexible conduit. This is part of that horizontal drilling operation that's going along the entire side of the building. I think this may be part of fiber optics, possibly for their computer systems. So that is definitely under the process of being installed along this side of the building. As I bring the drone back down lower again, a good view into this part of the ground floor, also onto the second floor. There's a lot of work going on under the roof with piping, and that's most likely for the fire suppression system. And I'll zoom in here so you get a much better view of how this section looks. I had a viewer mention that he saw some bollards being installed next to the glass along parts of this second floor. And if that is in fact the case, it may indicate we'll see vehicle movement in this part of the new structure. So that'll be something I'll have to monitor and verify if in fact that is the case. More work on the roofing materials. It pretty much spans the entire length of the south end now, and both of the angle corners are getting ready to have their roofing installed. We see much more of the roof decking has been installed on this part of the structure, including this new steel structure that essentially joins the original building on the left and the new building on the right. Good view down through the beams of some of the floors that are being installed and how this part of the factory is starting to shape up. And the remaining section that is open between the two structures has now gotten to the point where it's just 4 column widths apart. A lot of the steel on the ground for the installation here, and by probably the end of the week, all of this steel work should be completed. And I'll be watching for a tree topping ceremony. I believe that will take place, indicating that the main structure assembly will be completed. So hopefully we'll see that here very soon. Some good work, our views of the work on the roof here as it continues to have that weatherproof membrane installed. And as I maneuver the drone, it's another great look here at the glass wall. And on the top of the glass, you can see that there's an open section, and that has been squared off. There will be concrete panels applied there to give it an overall square look when you are looking at the south end of the building, despite the fact that the roof has multiple peaks in it for rainwater management. And more work that's going on that parapet wall with all of those man lifts. As we continue to fly to the southeast corner of the structure, a couple of things that I want to point out to you is just look at some of the materials that are here. There's some rebar. Also saw some steel items that were beams for some of the structure. See more of the piping on the right. Here we see conduit being delivered off of this truck and a good view of the structural cooling platform. In addition to the concrete that has been poured and all of the red scaffolding holding up the form still, we see that they are now erecting these small wall sections around where I believe the Evapco units will be installed as part of the chiller system. And this is a really good view looking down. I'll zoom back in and get a good sense of those structures that are being erected on the roof section and more on the ground that are being prepared to be lifted up and installed. So progress on this cooling platform has definitely taken place and continues to take place. So I'm going to maneuver the drone while staying on zoom so you get a good view of this structure and how it is continuing to develop. As I pull back to give an overall view of the south end extension, a few more things that I noticed. At the bottom of the screen, we see more trenching being done underneath this intersection. And also we see how that access for the cranes looks and that south end opening, how little it remains for the crane to be installing the steel. Another thing that I did notice is that there is a new temporary platform that reaches from the ground to the roof here. It's a good view of this. Suggests that the white and blue crane next to it will be used to be hoisting up some equipment, most likely related for the chiller unit here that we see also under construction on the left. And all of the materials and workshops on the right-hand side of the screen are related to this installation that is underway right now. And you can see that 6 of these kind of fan duct units have been installed. The rest of these ducts are still stored on the west side material staging yard and are slowly being moved over here, in addition to all of the grate material that finishes off that roof structure. So here's a good view of all of the materials and the workshop that's going on here for that installation. Also a good look across the power lines to the multi-level parking garage and the surrounding grounds, how this is looking right now. On the ground, we can see that the ground slab has been poured and all of the markings, and also we could briefly see that all of the other floors have also had their concrete and marking completed. There is only now one small section remaining for concrete. You can see the steel mesh has been installed. Also, the column bases for the lights are installed, as well as the conduit. So soon we'll see that section poured with concrete, and then the entire roof will be completed. And here's a good view of the east side, some of the materials waiting, the extension for Robotic Avenue on the bottom, and the intersection with River Road on the left. As I continue to maneuver the drone, this is a good view of the north side of the multi-level parking garage, the trailers for the contractors, and more of the steel corrugated pipe laid around the Robotic Avenue extension here on the bottom of the screen. So as I maneuver towards the original testing and calibration lot and fly over the helicopter pad and the Rainmaker on the left and the wind tunnel on the right, it's a good view of the number of Cybertrucks that are stored here. Now these are undergoing some additional final checks before they are ready to move over to the outbound lot. What is the difference between these and the ones that go direct to the outbound lot? I'm not 100% sure, but from what I understand, there is some sort of difference in why they are stored here temporarily. Here's a good view of these 5 new receiving doors waiting for their enclosures and how that section looks right now. One of those had plastic on it, so maybe they're working on one of the doors. Here's some additional receiving doors that have most of their enclosures installed, still waiting for that concrete. And then next to these 2 towers where the asphalt or the concrete was expanded, we see more of the castings, more of the racks and castings here next to this large dirt section where we've seen all of the screw type piers installed. Looks like now they are installing a lot of conduit, and that will be completed before all the rebar that we see are put out for the concrete. This is for that permit that we talked about for the bag house, which is a filtration system. And speaking of which, we see some of those flues on the bottom of the screen and some other items that were put inside the building. I had thought that they were installed, but I think that they were just moving them out of the way for all of this work on the dirt section. So once again, we see those kind of collectors, and most likely those are related to the bag house plant filtration system. And that's where we see all of this work going on right now. So I'm going to maneuver the drone over the power lines. I'll bring it down lower so we get a good view of the activity that is underway here. And as you can tell, they're doing some excavation work to try to prepare this grade, most likely for the rebar and the foundation. A good look at the conduit that is being installed, and I believe that this is related to the conduit we're going to see on the northeast corner. A good view at a lower altitude of those items on the right, kind of the collectors that I think are for the bag house filtration system. And then on the left, you can see those 3 receiving doors that were being demolished now have had more of the wall panels demolished. And clearly there's a lot of rework that's going to be done here to finish up this entire section of the east side of casting. As we wrap around to the northeast side, there's a good view of the trench work, the concrete vaults, and the conduit that is being installed right now. You can see the 90-degree or the 45-degree angle, and also on the ground, if you look closely, there's markings of where they're going to continue to excavate out the concrete, and that's going to move all the way up through the parking lot to Tesla Road. So I'm going to maneuver the drone around, just give you a quick view of the north end, but I want to turn back and follow that conduit up to the north across Tesla Road to show you how the work is progressing. But here's a good view again of that conduit, the installation, and on the ground, the marks where it shows where they're going to cut out more of the concrete. It'll go underneath this road, through this parking lot, and then underneath this green section, Tesla Road, to this area where we see all of the conduit construction underway. And with the angle here, we can see at the bottom left is where it's going to turn another 45 degrees to head to the south. And then here's a good look at the trenching, the conduit installation up to the concrete vaults. It'll turn about 70 degrees and move its way up to the north to this location where there will be these concrete vaults and kind of a junction where the conduit will turn back to the east. It will proceed underneath the power lines. And as I fly up over the power lines, we get a good sense of the distance between the conduit on the left, where it's going to take that turn, and then where it's going to junction up here. And then it also makes another turn to the north, continues under the ground here where most of the dirt has already been filled back in to this location where we can clearly see more of the conduit. And then it proceeds up to the right to the south end of the electrical switch yard. So here's a good overall view of how this section looks. And in the intro, I showed you kind of a yellow dotted line of where the conduit will proceed. Flying over the Martin Marietta plant and approaching the die shop, I noticed that the door on the west was open, and it looks like there are some deliveries that have been made and they're moving the items in. So I wanted to get a close view, but unfortunately it looks like almost all of the equipment has been unloaded by the time I got here, and all we see is the empty crates and the packaging for the most part. So I would suspect that this has to do with the material that we saw delivered here on the north end, some of which is still stored next to the external kiln or furnace that you see with this roof. And you can see more of the items on the north end of the building. And I believe it's all related to what we saw being moved inside on that west door. As we approach at this low altitude the chiller plant for the cathode plant, this is a good view of the floor on the ground and the equipment that is installed. Also the tanks, the vaporizers, and the storage tanks in white. Plus we can see those Evapco fan units, which will be similar to what we will see installed on that southeast side of the new extension. So I'm going to turn back to the north here. I want to try to give you a view of this delivery that's being made on this truck. And it looks like most of the delivery has been removed by the time I got here, but more items for the die shop. So as we fly along the cathode plant, take a look at the clearing and that wall unit that still is waiting for the wall panels to be installed. Let's go up to the north here. I'll reposition to take a look at this entire west side. And one of the things I noticed just to the north of these trailers on the ground is a concrete wall panel next to that yellow telehandler. And I think that may be the panel that will go into that opening that we saw with all the plastic just to the north of the chiller plant. So I'm going to fly to the northeast, give you a slightly different view of this kind of the dirt staging area, some of the earthwork that hasn't really progressed in several months now. On the top of the screen, we can see that rental equipment lot and that large grass area with the lone tree. And then the other large rectangular section that has more of the platforms and production equipment waiting for installation. Plus we see more of the concrete here that was removed from the east side of the casting machine structure, and some of those equipment, including that red and white bridge crane ready for installation. The section here with the trailers, the materials on the left, and this structure in the middle is the cell testing lab or recycling lab. And it does look like it continues to be busy in this particular location. So they're doing some work with cells in there. The wade pit still has a little water in it, but it's not being used too much. I did want to point out the work that's going on here at the crash test facility. There are many of the vehicles, including Cybertrucks, one of which was a release candidate. That's the RC. Looks like they are using those for crash testing now, maybe to help get data and remove those from the inventory. I also noticed that the dunk tank has water in it. The grates are removed, and as you can tell, there's some activity that is going on here, most likely related to some of the crash testing that has recently taken place. So it looks like the crash test facility is definitely busy as well. So here's a good view from a higher altitude of the entire east side, looking to the west to the main factory and how it looks today. As always, thank you very much for watching. I do very much appreciate your support, and I hope you have a great day. Take care.